Okay, stretching hats. It's like a controversial kind of a subject. There are plenty of people who will stretch your hat. There are people who sell you hat stretchers, hat jacks, this and that, and it's a business. There are people who sell hat stretchers. Do hats actually stretch? Yes and no. Mostly no, though. Okay, if we're talking about something like a Western hat, a fedora, anything, with the standard, like the silk lining and the leather sweatband like this, it's not really gonna stretch. What you do is you stretch everything. You get everything just totally out of whack. Like, the stretcher's about this thick, so you're stretching this area, so the hat is like that. And you've stretched this area out. You've got a big stair step there that you have, rubbing that out is very difficult to turn that stair step into a slant. And you want to stretch in the back, so you're going to apply heat just in the back through the hat here, so that the elastic becomes more elasticy, so more stretchy, flexible. And that way when you're cranking it open with the hat jack, the back will open, and you're not going to get any distortion in the front because you're applying heat here. The stretch will happen only in the back, which is better because we don't see that much. So I've gotten this whole thing down to a science after like 27 years at JJ Hat Center. JJ Hat Center is like the largest hat shop in New York, and I get it, at least a hat or two every single day to be stretched. Can you clean up this hat? Can you fix it up? Can you straighten the brim? It's a little tight. Can you fix it? And then put it on his head, and it's really tight, I get a lot of that. When you keep your hat in storage and don't wear it for a while, the leather dehydrates. So if you have anything like you just don't wear it for a long time, like it's in your house for 3 years or something, when you put it on, it's going to be shrunk and dehydrated. So basically, the idea is to wear the hat because the natural sort of oils from your body and the heat and everything keeps the leather conditioned. It doesn't shrink that way. It's just since you're wearing it, you're kind of sweating it up, and the body oils and this and that just keep that piece of leather soft, supple, and you get no shrinkage. But if you don't wear it, the hat is probably in a hot environment for half the year when the winter heater is blasting and your house is kind of hot. That leather is just drying out, and you're not conditioning it by wearing it, so it shrinks. So we get lots and lots of people with shrunken hats needing them to be stretched. Now, we have a steel hat stretcher, which is really big. It's not just a little hat jack that you crank open like this. So we can get, a more powerful stretch and this and that, but it's the same deal. If anybody notices, what happens is you stretch the hat until the hat is completely, like out of shape. There's all these things you have to fix and everything because it's totally whacked. And then 10 minutes later, it's the exact same size again. You get home the next day, you're like, that stretch was not that good. There's a reason why this happens. The main reason is this little thing here. See that shiny little line? That little line right there on the edge of your leather sweatband. That serves a purpose. Okay, that's a tube. It's a hollow tube, made out of this kind of leather stuff, whatever, fake leather. And then inside of the tube is a very thick piece of fishing line, like nylon, like a nylon fishing cord, but it's a nice thick one. And what that does, that's the reed of the hat. If you ever notice, you've got this nice oval shape here. It always springs back to that same nice oval shape. That's because of the reed. The reed's under pressure. It's like think of a ring of piano wire. Okay, so if you're trying to put a hat on that's too tight, you're a 7 1/4, but you're trying to put on a 7 1/8. So you've got this ring under tension. It's very tight. That's too small for your head that you're jamming onto your head, and then there's this pressure, like that ring of piano wire. It's always there. What you need to do to get a hat to begin to stretch is you have to alleviate that tension. Right in here, I go right there and I make a little cut on the tube, this tube here, right at the seam. So I make a little cut right there. And then you can peel it apart and you'll see the fishing line inside there, the line that goes along this circle. Once you see the fishing line, you get something like a needle nose pliers or like a pair of wire cutters, even better. You slip it in there, or even a scissor is fine, and you cut the reed. So now you've got a piece of piano wire with a cut. So that will go over your head very easily, right? But when it's under tension and it's too small for you, it's just gonna squeeze you like a torture device. Now, the reason your hat doesn't ever stretch, well, it stretches, but it's only temporary. It's very, very temporary. The reason this happens is because the reason why they put that fishing line in there is it has a certain quality to it. It'll stretch and then always come back to its original shape. So you can take this, stretch it really long. You know, let's say I stretch this is, let's say, just for a figure, this is 8 inches. If I stretch it to 16 inches, twice as long, that fishing wire will stretch, 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 and then contract back to its exact original shape. That's why we use that particular material in there. We could use wire, we could use string, there's all kinds of things they could use in there. But that stuff has an elasticity, okay? So that if you're knocking it out of shape, whatever you do, let's say you just do this, okay? It goes with the flow. It doesn't kink the hat, you know, like a piece of wire would stay kinked. What it does is it goes back to its original shape. And that's what it's meant to do, to always keep this nice oval form, which gives you, you know, some structure to your hat. Now, if you leave the reed in, but just cut the tension, cut that string, the fishing line, then you're in business. Now you can start to stretch your hat, okay? You could do whatever. You could crank it open with a hat jack, or you could pull it across your chest. You could pull it over your knee. 2 hands over your knee, just increase pressure. Don't jerk it, but just increase slowly, slowly, slowly. Lengthwise only. You probably just want to go lengthwise, okay? And stretch it like that every day. Pull it over your knee. All those things work. The best thing is actually wearing it. It makes the leather become softer, and it'll stretch. The leather will actually stretch to meet the shape of your head. When it's dry, it doesn't really do that well. So conditioning it, the best way to condition it is to wear it. I don't recommend putting any kind of leather conditioners on there or anything like that, because it can affect the finish that's on here. Sometimes there's like a paint or a finish, and this paint that's on the outside can actually like just come off on your skin. It's not always painted. Most of the time it's, you know, it's tanned like leather, you know. But sometimes when you see black ones and stuff, there's like an actual finish on there, you know, like a crystal clear coat and a black kind of a paint and stuff. So you don't want to condition leather, just wear it. That's the best way. And keep it away from heat. Heat is your enemy. People say, well, I don't store it by a radiator, but your house is hot enough. When your house is just, you know, really heated in the winter, and, you know, it's 0 degrees out, but your house is a nice comfortable, you know, 65 or 70 or whatever, that's hot enough. So what you have to do is, especially when these things get wet, dry it with a hanky after you come in, and keep it away from heat when it dries. So crack the window a little bit in the kitchen or the bathroom or someplace like that, the basement, and just let it dry someplace cool instead of hot. You won't get any shrinkage in the leather. Fur felt, for the most part, doesn't shrink, but it kind of does. It just shrinks way, 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 way slower than wool felt will. A wool felt can shrink up, you know, to the point where you can't really even wear the hat after 15 or 20 years of, you know, hard use. A fur felt, you know, you can use it 2, 3 times that long and it'll still be usable, but you start to get some shrinkage. The brim length gets a little less, the crown gets a little shallower, and you also stretch it out because it's feeling tight. You pull it and you stretch it out. So the hat is fitting you, but there's not enough mass to kind of make it look like a real hat anymore. So it starts to get this kind of a vagrant look, like almost like that, like a cone. Because you're getting less and less brim from it shrinking, and then you're stretching it out so that you could wear it. So that's what happens to very, very old hats. Now, it doesn't have to happen to it, but it happens from the hat getting wet and then putting it in a hot environment. So if you treat your hat well, your hat will still look new in 40, 50, 60, 80 years even. There are people who get generational hats, you know, from their dad, their grandfather, the great-grandfather. There are plenty of hats from the 20s, 30s, the 1800s for sale online that look really, really clean. It's a matter of how the hat was used, if it was used, and how it was used. It's not really the quality. Yeah, so anyway, if you want your hat to stretch, you have to cut the reed, okay, to start it off, and then do some stretching. I don't really believe in using hat jacks because, like I said, it only stretches that area. The hat becomes so distorted that, you know, it's not even worth being able to wear it anymore. What I do is I just pull the sweatband out if I have to. I pull it out completely so that the outside of the hat still looks perfect, but the inside is raw. But at least nobody will know. It'll just still look perfect. And you could gain like a whole size or two by pulling out the sweatband. First thing I'll do is I'll cut the reed. If that's not enough, I'll cut the reed and I'll stretch it, you know, stretch it. And if that's not enough, I'll pull the whole sweatband out. That's a pretty radical thing to do. But if you have a hat that's so tiny that, you know, you need a huge stretch, that's what you do. You pull the sweatband out. So the inside might look a little raw, but at least the outside is not distorted at all. It still looks brand new. So that's my theory. I still will stretch hats, but, you know, there's only a very little amount that you can do. And it gets to the point where the hat starts to get so distorted that it's like, let's just stop. So in other words, you can stretch a hat as much as you want. You can make a size 7, size small into a size extra large, but, you know, it'll look like, you know, it just won't look right at all. So there's a point where you want to stop. If you're a 7.5 and your hat's a 7, you might be able to get it up to like a 7, 7/1/8, 7/1/4. But once you start going to 3/8 and a half, it's just so horrible. So you want to stop here so you can still wear the thing. That's the theory. But for me, like I said, I cut the reed, then we start to stretch. Even hand stretching is good. Over your knee is fine. You just do one of those. And do it a lot of times. It'll take you a few days. Treat it like exercise, like you're doing curls or whatever. It's good wrist exercise. It's good forearm exercise. You can do the side too if you think you have a wide head. People who are Asian generally need side stretch too. But European and African heads generally length. That's going to do it. And that's about it. So if you want to stretch your hat and you want it to stay, cut the reed. Cut it. Alright? You don't have to pull the whole cord out. That's going to make your hat floppier and softer. But leave the reed in and just cut the tension. And that's it. No one will see it. It's microscopic. It's just so tiny. Don't even worry about that. If you want, you could put a stitch or two on after if that bothers you. Generally, it doesn't really affect the hat's integrity. It just allows it to stretch easier. That's it. All right.